Alright, guys, what is up? What is up? Theory and theology. Um, Today is the second day of Rosh Hashanah. Um, I guess it started on, it's Friday right now, 6:22 a.m. on Friday morning. It started on Wednesday night. So Wednesday night going in, or Wednesday sundown going into Thursday sundown. That was day one. And then Thursday sundown to Friday sundown is day two. But then there's also the Sabbath that starts on Friday sundown to Saturday sundown. So I guess I was a little curious to see kind of biblically what happens because I guess initially I watched the Central Synagogue's service. I've been having trouble sleeping, so Thursday morning I had actually woken up pretty early in the morning, and it was like 7:15 my time, but I think the service had started at like 7 a.m. And so I just kind of tuned into it because I was like, maybe it'll put me back to sleep, you know? And I was like, might as well. Like, I wanted to listen to it, and it was kind of going live. So I missed the beginning and kind of listened up until there was a part where they were doing the shofar blasts. I listened up until that point, and then later, near sundown, I listened to the rest from that point, from the shofar blast. But then they started talking about, you know, Israel stuff and all that with the current events, and so I kind of was like, I don't really want to listen to this anymore. So I kind of tuned out from that because I don't know, like I'm kind of like, I still like to stay pretty disconnected from stuff, and I kind of don't really like it when, um, I guess when religious um, services start talking about politics, like elections and wars and all kinds of stuff. Like, I know it's relevant, especially, if I'm going to be listening to, Jewish content. I mean, it's going to come up. It's kind of inevitable. And then, you know, listening to Muslim content as well, it kind of comes up too. And so I kind of was listening up until that point, and so I didn't really see if they did anything more. Um, but it was maybe about an hour and a half, an hour 45 minutes that I kind of listened total. Maybe a little less than that. Let's say like 15 minutes less than that. Um, because I didn't listen to the very beginning 15 minutes or so. And this morning, Central Synagogue has another. I mean, they had a Rosh Hashanah family service, and then this morning they have a second day worship service. That's at 6:30 a.m. my time. I believe Central Synagogue is located in New York. That's what it sounds like by the way they talk about different places, and it's definitely East Coast time. Um, so I just wanted to check it out and see kind of what they do. Um, but it was pretty lengthy, and I was wondering. I was like, okay, where does it talk in the Torah about the commandment of keeping 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 Rosh Hashanah. Like, what does it say? And so I guess the first thing I was interested in was trying to see kind of what it said. And so I think it was, I'm trying to remember. I think it's Leviticus 24, 25 or something like that, or 24, 5 or something. Let me see. It's in Leviticus and it's in Numbers. I don't know. Let me see. 24. It's not 24:5. And there is no 24:25. Let me see. Well, it's in the 20s. I know that much. I just don't know exactly where. I thought I knew where it was. But yeah, it's in Leviticus and Numbers 29:1. Basically, it just says the 7th month, on the first day of the month, to observe a sacred occasion, not working at your occupations, and observe as a day when the horn is sounded, or the shofar, or a day of festivity. This one says what you should do as far as like offerings, burnt offerings, and meal offering, and a sin offering. It says, in addition to the burnt offering of the new moon with his meal offering, and the regular burnt offering with his meal offering, each with its libation as prescribed, offerings by fire of pleasing odor to the Lord. And then it starts going into Yom Kippur in 29:7 of Numbers. And so, yeah, it basically says a lot of stuff to do. And then I think, so it must be in 23. I'm still trying to find this. I have different books. So some of the books I have, Bible related books, it's easier to find the information. In this one, it's not as easy because it doesn't have a lot of it doesn't have a lot of what am I trying to say? Like headings. So yeah, I kind of rely a lot on headings for like the order of things. So okay, so that's where it is. It's 23, Leviticus 23, verse 24, verse 24. Again, the 7th month, the first day of the month, observe a complete rest, a sacred occasion commemorated with loud blasts, You shall not work at your occupations. You shall bring an offering by fire to the Lord. And then it goes into talking about the Day of Atonement. So it is kind of interesting. In Numbers, it talks about more types of offerings. And Leviticus, it only says an offering by fire. So it's pretty interesting. And I think nowadays people like candles. I was reading a bit about it. It seems like people like candles. The candle's supposed to last from, before Rosh Hashanah starts into when you're bringing in the time when the sun goes down. So it's supposed to last. I don't know how long it's supposed to last. So it just kind of goes on. There's really not a lot of information biblically, which is something that I was a little surprised about, because I thought, okay, there's going to be like all these extra commandments and stuff. And I mean, I find it interesting how the Bible, like looking at, not, I guess I'm not trying to like criticize, but looking at a religion and seeing what the people actually do, and then reading it from like the book that they follow, or the main book that they follow, and there's very limited information. And so I do find that interesting. Another thing I found interesting was I was trying to find in the New Testament if there was anything about Jesus, you know, celebrating Rosh Hashanah, or speaking or talking or doing anything that was like noted. And it seems like it's just not mentioned in the New Testament, which I find very interesting, because Sukkot is mentioned, Hanukkah is mentioned, Passover is mentioned. I'm pretty sure there's others. But I just found that interesting. I was like, okay, it's the beginning of, a period of the new moon, and a new month, and a new year. But it's not really mentioned in the New Testament that Jesus did anything in particular, or that was, of any reason why somebody should note it down. And maybe I'm not searching in the right places, but I was a little shocked to find that, or to not find that. I don't know how to word it, but I was a little bit surprised. Definitely surprised that it didn't come up in the New Testament. And then, let's see, other thoughts. I guess if you look at the Hebrew for Christians website, it kind of does something that I notice Christianity does this a lot. I think all religions do this, but they kind of take something and start like assigning all kinds of meanings and interpretations to stuff. So in the section where it talks about like in Hebrew, on the Hebrew for Christians website, it's the number 4, not FOR. The number 4. Hebrew, then the number 4, and then Christians.com. If you look at holidays and you scroll all the way down to fall holidays, you'll see where it has Rosh Hashanah, and it talks about the the, the customs. Um, I don't really know the significance of most of the customs, but you can listen to the shofar. It talks about sounding the shofar. It gives some other Bible verses, Torah readings, and it also has New Testament readings and other Old Testament readings. So it has, in addition to the ones that we mentioned before with Leviticus and Numbers, it says Genesis 22 verses 1 through 34, pretty much, and then 1 Samuel 1 through 1 Samuel chapter 2 to verse 10, and Jeremiah 31 1 through 19, 1 Thessalonians 4 13 to 18, 1 Corinthians 15 51 to 54. Now, I don't know if those, let me see if any of these have any specific. Okay, so the birth of Isaac. So this is talking about the birth of Isaac in Genesis. That's what the story is. And then the treaty with Abimelech. And what that has to do with this, I couldn't tell you. And then I know that people say that, God provided the ram. I was reading that somewhere that it's like God provided the ram for Abraham to spare Isaac. And then that's the significance of the shofar, the ram's horn. I don't know if that's, I don't know. I've never really heard that before, but it said that somewhere. The 1 Samuel readings are about the birth of Samuel. Which I also don't know why this is something that's being recited here. And then Samuel being dedicated, and then Hannah's prayer. I'm just going through all these passages to see, like, why would they have chosen that? The Lord will turn mourning to joy. That's from the Jeremiah sections. And then the New Testament sections that are mentioned talks about the coming of the Lord. And that's one of those things I was saying where there's kind of this interpretation that we see that happens with some texts when you're reading some religious texts, or when you're reading on websites or listening to people speak or sermons. They kind of put a spin on something. Yeah, I have no idea. Okay, so they're saying things in 1 Corinthians about the trumpet will sound and the dead will be raised imperishable. We will be changed, for this perishable body must be put on the imperishable, and this mortal body must put on immortality. And so a lot of what I've seen with the Christian take on things a lot of it seems to be very related to, um, you know, the second coming, um, which I don't know. I don't know how people are coming to that conclusion. I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm just saying I really don't know. Um, yeah. So it talks about Rosh Hashanah, the 10 days of repentance. Um, and let's see. I mean, there's a lot. There's kind of a lot going on. Um, and and I don't know. I mean, so I guess for people who want to follow this holiday as it's commanded, it's very interesting. Um, I find it very interesting that I guess there's sacrifices involved, and in the US, you don't really see a lot of animal sacrifices. I mean, I'm not saying they don't exist because I know people who have rituals from all kinds of cultures where they sacrifice animals and stuff, but I have yet to see any religious group, um, as far as the mainstream religious groups, I have yet to see um, anyone, offering animal sacrifices. Um, and I wonder, I mean, I don't think it's illegal, so I don't know why people don't do it. I've heard that, the sacrifices need to take place in the temple, and because the temple does not exist, that's why, Jewish people don't sacrifice. But I'm wondering, I guess I'm just wondering about some things. It's a little, I get a little curious about stuff like that. It's a little weird where I'm like, I don't know, people don't really talk about it, so I don't really understand it fully. Um, because it's like there was a lot going on in those temples in those days, and but there's still a lot that Jewish people do that doesn't take place in the temple. So I just guess I don't understand fully why people don't hold sacrificial ceremonies, when it says to do it, and then people don't do it. Um, I mean, people don't really raise, livestock too much where I live. I mean, I'm in LA. I don't think I've ever seen. I mean, I had neighbors in like El Sereno that had like goats and chickens, and you could hear them. You could hear the roosters crowing. You could hear the the sheep or whatever they are, goats. I don't know the difference between sheep and goats, honestly, but you can hear them, making noises and stuff like animal noises. And it was so long ago when I used to have a Razor phone, and I remember taking a little video clip on my Razor phone of the neighbors, like rooster crowing and the friggin' animals just like making noise and stuff. And I could see them because it was like the way our backyard was laid out. You could see their backyard, so you could kind of see the little animal pens. And I mean, I'm not saying they were sacrificing them. I'm just saying they owned them. And that's probably, other than like petting zoos or like when I visited Missouri and saw like cows and horses and stuff that people owned in like a small area, like people actually owned them on their property. I've never really been too close to livestock. Um, I've never been that close to them, and I've never really seen them too much. Um, I mean, I eat meat, but other than that, I don't really come across those types of animals too much. But I would believe you could technically buy them. You should probably be able to purchase. Um, uh, uh, so looking at, I mean, they give this verse, John 4:35. Um, do you not say there are yet 4 months, then comes the harvest? Look, I tell you, lift up your eyes and see that the fields are white for harvest. And so that's from John 4:35. Before that comes Jesus and the woman of Samaria. Um, and that story goes into um, this um, where the disciples are saying in verse 31, telling Jesus, saying, Rabbi, eat. And then Jesus replies, I have food to eat that you do not know about. And they were confused because they took it literally. And Jesus said, my food is to do the will of him who sent me and to accomplish his work. And then it goes into that sentence of, do not say there are yet 4 months, then comes the harvest. Look, I tell you, lift up your eyes and see that the fields are white for harvest. Already the one who reaps is receiving wages and gathering fruit for eternal life, so that sower and reaper may rejoice together. And then it goes on later to say that many Samaritans in that town believed in him because of the woman's testimony. He told me all that I ever did, kind of thing. So, according to Hebrew for Christians, the website, that verse, that kind of section, they say the very first fall festival on the Jewish calendar is Yom Teruah, also called Rosh Hashanah, which is a picture of the catching away of Kalat Mashiach, the bride of Christ, for the time of Sheva Barakot, 7 days of blessing that follows the marriage ceremony. So I don't even understand I don't think that really says, I don't think that really says specifically Rosh Hashanah. I mean, it is a mention of Jesus saying something about when the year is going to end. Like there's or when the harvest is going to, when there's going to be the harvest. Um, there's still supposed to be 4 months, so like he's mentioning that the harvest, I guess, begins at the beginning of the new year. Um, and so, but I mean, it doesn't specifically say that. It's just kind of like almost implied. But I don't know. Like they keep talking, about, where they say Christians in Rosh Hashanah, it goes into the Great Tribulation, the Second Coming, all these different kind of things about judgment and all this kind of stuff. And so I don't really know fully I guess we don't really have fully a specific answer about what things look like with Jesus. And, to me that is pretty interesting that it's just not there. And they're pulling all these verses that have like just vague, it's just vague stuff. It's not like, other than what it says in Leviticus and Numbers, all the other verses are very just kind of like, I don't know why they chose to reference those. But it has this order at the very bottom of like some terms related to Rosh Hashanah. And so I feel like it's a lot to try to figure out exactly, I'm not someone who was like raised with this holiday, but I just find it very interesting, because I like the moon a lot, basically. And so I kind of like things that have like a lunar calendar cycle to them. And I actually thought I knew a lot more about this holiday than I actually do. So I was surprised to kind of read, like, I was reading just a little bit. I wasn't really diving too deep, but reading just a little bit and being like, okay, like, now I know that in Jewish culture there's more than Torah. There's there's the rest of the Old Testament. There's, there's the Mishnah, there's the Talmud. And so I know a lot of traditions and things often are taken from other places. So, I haven't really dove into those to really see what they say specifically. But I'm gonna just guess that a lot of the stuff that the sages recommend doing has a lot to do with the traditions that aren't really mentioned in the Bible. But I do find it interesting as like someone who's kind of outside of this culture, just trying to see kind of like what people do versus what they're reading and what it says and how they kind of get where they're at, as far as behaviorally or worship practices or different traditions, like it is kind of interesting to me sometimes when traditions aren't obvious. Like it's not like an obvious, like if somebody was like, follow this holiday, here's a Torah, here's where you can find it. I don't think I would maybe get to the same conclusion as what I saw with the synagogue service that I watched. I'm not saying it's wrong because what do I know? But I mean, I think it's just interesting. And I know that there are prayer books. The one that I have only really has the weekday service. It doesn't have the Shabbat service. It doesn't have any of the holiday, specifics in there. It has a little bit of information, but it doesn't have, unless it's something on the weekday. Like there was a part in the prayers, I think after the mourner's Kaddish, that had a section about Rosh Hashanah, like what is read for Rosh Hashanah. But I don't know anything else in there. I don't know. It's just a very interesting thing, and the idea of not of of resting as well. So that's another factor. And so, whenever there's something in the Bible that talks about rest or not working or not doing any heavy kind of labor, it's always interesting because there's usually when you look in other texts outside of the Bible and look at other Jewish texts, whenever it talks about work, there's usually a lot to be said. There's usually a lot that people are saying about work and like doing or not doing certain stuff because of work. And so, like what counts as work and all those questions that come up. It really is just um, a very interesting topic. Because I'm pretty sure there's some information somewhere that's supplemental that goes into all these details about what it means not to work. I already saw in the commentary how it said like an example of reorganizing your furniture, is a form of something that might not be permitted. Um, Things like that because it's not necessarily restful, even if it's not considered work specifically. But and so I guess that's the difference. Like it says rest and not work. It doesn't say don't work. It says do rest. And there was something in there that said that it's a positive commandment stating that a person is to rest. And then how it talks about the offerings by fire and the shofar blasts. So that's all it really says to do. But I'm wondering, do people are people doing it right if they're not doing the sacrifices? Like, is our sacrifices something that you know are obsolete because we're depending where you live? I mean, we're not all modernized people, in cultures. You know, we're not all modernized cultures. There are plenty of people who follow, you know, this type of holiday and aren't living in like a developed area or like a technologically advanced place. And I'm not saying anything negative about that. I think there's a lot of value in living that way as well. Um, I, if I were to do that, I would have to develop a lot of skills that I do not have to be able to survive. But I do like, you know, cultures that do that. And, you know, there are people who live more rurally, um, who might depend on animals and the land more than, you know, someone like myself who lives in Los Angeles. And so, I mean, I'm not saying we don't depend on animals in the land, we still do, but, you know, I'm not necessarily firsthand growing things. My parents do, but, you know, we don't live off of what we grow and eat and raise. We go to the store and somebody else figures that out and we just buy it from them. But yeah, like people having, you know, access to sacrifices, I don't even know, like, I really just don't hear people talk about that stuff too much. I think it's also kind of a taboo topic because it's kind of a little strange, um, with modern societies the way that they are, and modern societies kind of assuming that they're better and more advanced and know more and are better off and moving forward and more evolved than people who don't buy into that. Um, it's kind of, I think a lot of ancient traditions kind of get a little bit looked down upon. I'm not saying people should look down upon them. I'm just saying, I think, in my opinion, you know, that might be why sacrifices don't happen so much. Um, but I would probably say that there probably are groups of people that do sacrifice, animals. I don't know this for sure, but the reason why I'm saying that is because I know a lot of people, family and friends, from Middle Eastern cultures and, African cultures that do sacrifice animals for certain occasions like weddings or like the birth of a baby or something special. You know, they might sacrifice an animal. It's not necessarily for like a Christian thing or whatever. It's more of a tradition that comes from somewhere else. But, and this is happening in modern times. I know people do sacrifice animals. I've just never heard of it too much in like Christianity or Judaism recently. I just haven't heard of people doing that. But I guess it is interesting to see that you know. I mean, I wasn't expecting to like watch a service online where they were going to be sacrificing animals. I would have been a little bit shocked because I've seen that service often and it's very modern, you know. But I would expect maybe people who have more access to like farms and, you know, livestock and things like that, they would probably, there are probably people out there who might do the sacrificing part. Um, but what do people do if they can't sacrifice? What do they do other than lighting candles? Um, is it just ignored? Because to me, it seems like it's just people just ignore it, and I can't tell if it's out of a convenience or if it's you know, fully not appropriate or allowed to do sacrifices. Like if the sacrifices people would be making that the Torah says to do, if they were doing them now just anywhere in the world, if they for some reason wouldn't count or wouldn't be honorable or wouldn't be proper, I just don't know. And so I don't know what I really think about all these kind of topics. It's kind of like a lot of information that's, you know, those, I guess those are just the pieces that I was interested in or what I came across. And I guess the next thing I wanted, well, there's a second day of service today. Since I'm talking through it right now, I'm like 30 minutes into the service, 37 minutes into the service that's playing live now, and I don't know how long it is. So I might listen to a little bit of it live before breakfast, and then I'll see. And then, but I was gonna also see, um, if Islam has anything about Lunar New Year. Um, it says Islamic New Year is expected to fall on July 7 or 8 in this year of 2024. Um, it's called Hijri New Year, and it's also Lunar New Year celebration. Um, so if I look up Islam holidays for 2024, I don't know, does it really stop at September 15th? Let's see. Well, I can't go by just the names. I don't know what the names are. Sorry, I'm like looking this up while I'm trying to talk. So it looks like September 16th is the last holiday that's like, that seems to be recognized on here, unless I keep scrolling. So, nah, these are other random days. National Boyfriend's Day, National Vodka Day, National Taco Day. Wow. So yeah, those aren't Muslim holidays. They're just holidays, like random celebrations that I think nobody really cares about that stuff. Um, they have too many days. It's like almost every other week there's like, or every day almost there's a holiday. Um, National Pancake Holiday, but I don't know. That's a funny thing, but yeah, that's about as far as I've gotten with everything. I mean, this might be my last post during Rosh Hashanah, or my only post during Rosh Hashanah this year, because it's gonna end tonight. But I don't really know if there's anything specific that I'd want to really learn about more than what I've already learned or looked at. Um, and also, you know, the Torah portions end soon, so the Torah readings are about to restart at Genesis coming up soon in a couple weeks here. So it's almost over. And sorry I'm talking so slow. I'm tired. But I just decided to wake up because I was like, well, I'm up anyways. But I didn't sleep that much. I woke up at like 1:30 a.m. and was just up. And then once it was like 5, I was like, well, I might as well just get up. So I had some coffee, and I'm kind of just gonna stay up past breakfast. I'll probably take a nap before lunch or something, but I don't know. I'm not really too tired because I had coffee. I'm just not super like alert and um yeah, it's still late for me. I mean, it's still early for me, but it's almost gonna be breakfast time pretty soon. So, and I had some bulletproof coffee, so I might just listen to some of the service if it's still going on for Rosh Hashanah day 2, and then otherwise, I'm not really. I think I've learned what I wanted to learn. I don't really know um, much more that I really would want to learn um, for this holiday. Just kind of, I've got some food for thought. I'd rather just think about things than read more. So, yeah, I'm happy with it. All right, guys, thanks for listening.